Welcome into the PFF NFL Daily. Today discussing Russell Wilson. Is Russ cooked, Sam? We got to pose that question because the Denver Broncos fall to 2-4 after another disastrous offensive performance on Monday Night Football against the Los Angeles Chargers. Russell Wilson, another rough game, man, and not looking good in Denver right now. But this is kind of dated back a couple years. So what's going on with Russ, the Broncos, and what does he have left?
Well, look, first of all, I can't believe you're ignoring that he has a real injury with real pain, as evidenced by Rap Sheet tweeting it out. You know,
did you not with the air quotes? The air quotes implies that it's not real. And here's the report. After the MRI, Russell Wilson's considered day-to-day. Said it's a real injury, and he's in real pain.
But
he's pushing to play.
Yeah.
The Broncos will continue to evaluate his progress on a short week. Of course, this is per Rap Sheet via, I don't know, someone in Russell Wilson's camp, obviously, because Russ is really hurt and he's really in pain. But of course, he really wants to play. So there you go. Russ is hurt. What's wrong with him, though?
Well, yeah, my point being simply that there are reasons why Russ is playing like garbage right now. And as is true with most of these things, it's not one thing. You know, there's a lot of things that are currently mashing together to cause Russell Wilson to play the worst football of his NFL career. It's certainly the worst football that can't be explained by mallet finger or whatever it was he did to himself with the Seahawks. So, number one, Wilson plays the game in a unique way, right? The idea that he came along and everybody hated him as a draft prospect because he was 5'11", and quarterbacks can't play in the NFL 5'11". That's ridiculous. Too short. You can't see over the offensive line. Like, as silly as that sounds, because of how good Russell Wilson has been and Kyler Murray and, you know, a lot of short quarterbacks that he kind of paved the way for, there's something to it at a fundamental level that if you're not 6'5", you have a very different picture of the defense or of the game than Russell Wilson does, you know, or that those guys do have. So he has to modify the way he plays. And every single coach he had in Seattle understood that and essentially dumped a bunch of concepts and plays and routes from the playbook. They didn't really exist, right? Wilson didn't target those areas because he can't really see them, which is fine because he was able to make up for that by having one of the best deep balls in the NFL and by being able to extend plays and make a bunch of things happen outside of that. But it meant a couple of things. One, that you always had this little sort of meat left on the bone of people wanting, well, why not just let Russ cook? It was like, well, because you can't really, because you're going to have to increase the frequency of those things that he doesn't like doing. And two, it meant that if the league ever changed, you might have some problems. And in the last 2 years, 18 months, we've seen the league change to this too high coverage shell as a default setting. And all of a sudden, the deep ball that was like his calling card is not really available as much as it used to be. And now you're just seeing him drowning in an offense that doesn't suit.
Well, look at that. You got some good reasons there. I mean, look, if you watched him throw the ball on Monday night, there were some times he zipped it in there, but there were other times the ball just died. It was not coming out right on the deep ball. And there were some sad numbers on Monday night as well. I mean, look, the overall, I don't have the overall stats right in front of me, but I'll say this. Early in the game, J.C. Jackson for the Chargers was just an absolute disaster. Like, just blown coverages. Russ started the game 10 for 10, and a lot of it was J.C. Jackson. Let's be serious. He got benched, Jackson. Once J.C. Jackson got benched, the Broncos averaged 2.4 yards per dropback. 2.4 yards per dropback, including sacks, including so essentially, if you take out the two J.C. Jackson plays, just take those out. That's what we watched the other night, an offense averaging 2.4 yards per attempt. And it felt that way. Kind of felt that uncomfortable watching the Broncos offense. And that's really how they've looked all season. So I don't know if the whole thing he's been battling an injury. I don't know if it's been the whole season. Last year, the mallet finger thing, it's kind of a freak injury. So you don't want to chalk it up straight to, is he injury prone right now? But I'll say this. Last year, it did look like he lost a step, right? It looked like he was losing a little bit of that maneuverability in the pocket. He showed flashes of it Monday night, but you're seeing that again this year too. Injury or not, is that a big part of this too? I like how you mentioned the league's moving one way. That's a factor. Is he just losing it a little bit physically here as he gets into his mid-30s?
I don't think that that's helping, but if I was sort of ranking a hierarchy of the most important factors behind him playing badly right now, I don't think that's in the top, certainly not the top three, might not even be the top five. I don't think Russell Wilson is still physically capable of playing at a very high level. I just think that everything else around him is not conducive to that happening. And there's a lot now on Nathaniel Hackett's plate to try and figure out that riddle. And we kind of speculated about this in the offseason. Everyone was blaming Pete Carroll, and it's Pete Carroll being a dinosaur, not wanting to put the ball in Russell Wilson's hands and blah, blah, and never unlocked him. And I think we're starting to learn a lot more about how that dynamic actually functioned, which was a sequence of coaches trying to meld NFL offenses to Russell Wilson as best they could. And that's a much more difficult task than you think it is, given how he plays. Now you've got a new coach trying to do that, and they are way far apart at the moment. And it's got the added complicating factor of that move of NFL defenses to all these two high shells, which kind of doesn't necessarily entirely take it away, but at the very minimum, massively reduces the impact of like the one thing he did that was truly special.
The NFL action is in full swing here at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. We're talking touchdowns, big plays, and even bigger wins. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. If that's not enough, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. Right now, for every leg you can you can boost your winnings up to 100%, even with bigger payouts, with payouts bigger than ever. Why bet on football anywhere else? Great job, Steve. To make things even sweeter, you can throw down on stepped-up same-game parlays once per game day all season long. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF to get $200 in free bets if your team wins when you place a $5 bet on any football game. That's code PFF only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Hey, look, I'm getting old too, much like Russell Wilson. I got some numbers for you, though, Sam. I want to turn back the clock again. We've laid this out before. In 2020, through 8 weeks, it was the best 8-week stretch we'd ever seen for a quarterback to start a season. 95 overall grade for Russell Wilson. He was literally on pace for about 70 passing touchdowns, and he was leading the nation in times he's been declared the MVP in primetime games, in island games, on Twitter. I mean, he was leading the world in all of that. Everybody said, here's my MVP. Here's my MVP. Russ is awesome. But something happened in week 9 of that year. He had a rough game against the Bills, followed by 3 rough games against the Rams in the second half of 2020. And I'm using that as an arbitrary cutoff to paint a picture. But since that point, 2020, week 10, week 9, 23rd in the NFL in PFF passing grade. 23rd among all quarterbacks with at least 500 passing attempts. By the way, that's out of 33. 22 out of 33 qualifiers there. So it's been going on beyond just this year. It was a little bit of 2020. It was a little bit of 21, a little bit of this year, even with mallet finger, this year's injury, new system. It all adds up fine. Either way, it's not a good performance for a long time now.
And bringing up those Ram games, I think, is important because I think those games were a portent of what was to come. Remember, the Rams under Brandon Staley, they're sort of at the forefront of this too high split safety look that take away the deep stuff and force teams to do other things and be more patient underneath. And in those games, it was like Wilson could never figure it out. He's like, well, hang on. I drop back. I run around at the, behind the line of scrimmage, and then I look deep and it's still not there. Like, what the hell is this? This is witchcraft. I'm unfamiliar with this defensive system that takes away this deep ball that I'm looking for every single play. And he just couldn't figure out what he was doing. And he ended up putting the ball, he just threw it up anyway, right? He had a ton of turnover-worthy plays in those games. This is what the league is running now. Like, everybody has gone in that direction, almost without exception. And all of a sudden, this is the defense he's facing every week. And he's in a new system. And the kind of the offense as it's structured doesn't have the stuff that he, is more comfortable with and is trying to get him to do other things. So it all looks terrible. And like, it's like the perfect storm of ways to get the worst out of Russell Wilson. And, you've got Nathaniel Hackett, first time in the job, already sort of struggling with certain elements of the gig. Like, now he's got maybe the hardest job in football in his hands, which is to midway through a season, junk your offense and figure out how to build a new one around a quarterback that's dying on his ass.
Yeah, look, early in the season, I wanted to give the pass. We've seen other quarterbacks, new system, new coach, take time to adjust relatively early still. But again, we're getting closer and closer to panic time because we're questioning the quarterback in Denver, and the head coach, Hackett, is getting a lot of questions thrown his way because of the game management, because it just looks terrible right now. Offense is his thing, and it's one of the worst in the NFL. So Russell Wilson, we'll see if they can turn it around, but he's off to a pretty rough start.
You got to answer the question. Russell Wilson, is he cooked?
He's not what he once was. I don't think he's getting back to it.
I think at least for this season, Russ is pretty well cooked.
Medium well. He's medium well.
Medium well.
It's a PFF, NFL Daily.